Hi everybody, Craig Peterson here. We're going to start out with a couple of Tesla articles in the news this week. These things are really not self-driving. I don't care what Tesla calls them and some problems people got themselves into. Tesla has had all kinds of news, and sometimes I wonder, what is happening here? Is this Elon Musk just trying to get a little bit more notoriety? I don't think so, because there have been so many negative articles out there. One of the reasons I would be extremely hesitant to buy a Tesla has to do with the door handles. Something as simple as the door handles. You probably know for a decade I was a volunteer in our emergency medical squad here and was doing paramedic work for anybody that needed it. No charge. I wasn't charging, the town was, but it was something where I got to see a lot of accidents. And sometimes I was first on the scene, beat the fire department there, sometimes even beat the police department there, although they were normally there first because they're out on the road and I'm at home in bed asleep in the middle of the night. I saw, as you can imagine, some horrific things, and all of you guys that are first responders listening, you've seen some just terrible things as well. And one of the things that really bothers me about the Tesla are the handles, the door handles, the outside door handles, to be a little more specific. Tesla has had some amazing crash tests. I don't know if you've seen them, but these Tesla cars broke the testing gear over at the National Highway Transportation Safety Board. They had to come up with new tests because these Tesla cars just took those crashes and did extremely well. And seeing what Elon Musk's company SpaceX has been able to do with these rocket ships, they have mastered the art of having a computer kind of predict what is going to happen in various circumstances. So it wasn't a huge surprise for me to see that they said, hey, yeah, you're in a car accident, one of these things. These cars were scoring an 11, a 12 out of 10. They were just that good. But the problem I have with that handle is exemplified by an attorney. I think he was out in Los Angeles who was in an accident. Now remember, in the Tesla cars and all these electric cars, there are batteries. And the batteries are typically some form of lithium-ion, and there's lithium glass that's under development. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on with those batteries. But the reason they're using them is that they hold a huge charge. Because you don't want to just go 79 miles on a charge. Most of the time you don't. One of the reasons I'm not real fond of electric cars is when I'm going for a drive, right? We'll drive to Florida. We'll drive to the middle of the country. We'll go up to Montana, up to British Columbia. So a lot of people are saying, okay, so you just go ahead and you get a gas-powered vehicle for that type of driving, and then you can use an electric car for most of your driving. So if most of the driving that they're talking about is the number of times I get into the car, then it would work, because most of the time I'm running to the grocery store or I'm running an errand here or there. So an electric car probably would be okay for that. Now, I have gotten many times before into the science behind electric cars and how they are nowhere near as green as even diesel vehicles are. Nowhere near, when you consider the entire life cycle, the manufacturing all the way through how many miles you can get out of these things. But the concern with this attorney's crash was that the batteries were damaged in the crash. And you can imagine what that means, right? You get rear-ended, you get hit in a certain way, that battery pack is impacted, things can happen. And our friends over at MythBusters, back when they were still on TV, did a little test on this. They built a rig in the back of a garbage truck because there were stories about these garbage trucks getting caught on fire, catching on fire. And the theory was, well, it's lithium batteries. And we're talking about small ones, the type that you have in a small cell phone. So they built a rig in the back of the truck, the garbage truck, And they strapped a lithium-ion battery to the front of this rig, which was a wedge, right? Because they wanted to make sure that it bent. And bending that battery now caused a short. Remember, these batteries are designed to hold as much power as they possibly can. If you have a short circuit inside a battery, what's going to happen? Think about an old light bulb, the Edison bulbs that we had for over 100 years. And those bulbs had a filament inside. And that filament, when it was heated up, what did it do? It gave us light, and it also gave us heat. The heat is the problem here, because our MythBusters friends were able to get that battery to ignite in that rig. And, of course, it ignites inside a trash truck. Remember, trash trucks are always compacting everything. If it goes ahead and ignites inside that, maybe you catch the trash on fire. In fact, they were able to get it to catch on fire. And this attorney's Tesla caught on fire in the accident. Now, when you have passers-by who see an accident, usually they'll stop and they'll try and help. We're that kind of people. We're all good Samaritans, at least almost all of us. And I have no remembrance at all of a single car accident where I got there and there was no one there. Sometimes it was just the police officer, but there's always someone who tries to stop. So these people who stopped to try and help this guy who was in his Tesla could not open the doors. And the reason was that the Tesla has these recessed handles. Yeah, they look cool. GM, a lot of the GM vehicles have had those handles over the years. And again, it's not something I would drive because of that. There's nothing to grab onto, because sometimes in an accident, you need to pry that door open. And by prying it open, I grab a handle, a good solid handle, and pull hard on that handle. And if you can pull hard on that handle, you can open that door sometimes if it's just that the frame's bent a little bit, and you can get that person out. And in this case, that attorney was not able to get out of that car. That battery was damaged, and the battery heated up and caught on fire, and we'll leave it at that. You can imagine what happened. So the Teslas have done very well in crash tests, but they have not done well when the batteries are damaged in a certain way. And that's why I have a bit of an issue with it. But we got two articles in the news this week. This first one's from Reuters, and it'll be in the newsletter that comes out on Saturday. But a Tesla driver was killed in an accident out in California. And this guy was one of these TikTok people. TikTok, that's that website where you can put up these short videos, and oftentimes there's a theme, there's a whole series of themes. People post videos using the same music or whatever it might be. And he had posted videos on what appeared to be his TikTok account, in which he was driving with his hands off the wheel. Now, you can obviously take your hands off for a second or two in almost any car, and I don't know that I would consider that safe. It happens, and it's happened before. But he was posting these pictures and praising Tesla's self-driving. In fact, he said full self-driving features. May 5th, Tesla Model 3 crashed into an overturned truck on a highway in Fontana, California. Southern California, you know where Fontana is, or you might anyways. And that crash, of course, as I mentioned, killed the Tesla driver, injured the truck driver, and a motorist who had stopped to help him. So again, we're seeing a problem with these self-driving features. And you might remember a few months ago, I was talking about a little study that was done. They made police cars out of a balloon. It was just a big blow-up car that was a balloon. And they put it part way in a lane. Just like a police officer might stop someone and be partially in the lane. And then they had different self-driving cars, or cars that had the autonomous, semi-autonomous mode, the follow-behind mode, etc. Go down that road and see what happens. And they kept hitting the cop. In this case, we're talking about an overturned truck on a highway. And apparently Tesla got it wrong. The Associated Press was citing the police, saying preliminary investigation determined that the Tesla's driver assistance system autopilot was engaged prior to the crash. And I've got a problem with them calling it an autopilot, because it isn't. It's not like an airplane where you engage the autopilot and then you just keep a basic eye on things. People are treating it like it's an autopilot, as in you can go to sleep. And when we come back here in just a minute, I'm going to talk about something just like that with another Tesla driver. So there's no final determination as to what driving mode the Tesla was in, but there's a couple of videos of him driving with his hands off the wheel posted on his alleged TikTok account. 35-year-old Stephen Hendrickson, Running Springs in California. A couple of quotes from him. "What would I do without my full self-driving Tesla after a long day at work?" He said a message on one of them. "Coming home from LA after work, thank God self-drive, best car ever." So when we get back, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. What are people doing with Teslas, and what should we be doing? Where are we going? Frankly, I think we're jumping the gun here. Hey, you're listening to Craig Peterson. You'll find me online at craigpeterson.com. We were just talking about Tesla. My biggest fear with Tesla, the biggest problem as I see it, number one reason I won't buy a Tesla, which has to do with the door handles and not being able to use them to easily pry out a door, an occupant of the vehicle, because, yeah, they're supposed to pop open. Yeah, they're supposed to open. But in this particular case I'm talking about, they just did not do it, which is a real problem. Very problem. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has been investigating, this is according again to Reuters, more than 24 crashes of Tesla vehicles, including this Fontana crash and a high-profile crash in Texas last month that killed 2 men. Since 2016, at least 3 Tesla vehicles operating on autopilot have been in fatal crashes, 2 involving a Tesla car driving beneath a semi-truck in Florida. The U.S. Transport Safety Board said Tesla's autopilot system failed to properly detect a truck as it crossed the car's path, contributing to the accidents, also caused by a lack of driver attention and an adequate driver monitoring system. Now, you can't say 3 or 4 crashes of a Tesla where there was a death involved represent much without knowing how many miles are being driven. It's like people saying, yeah, it's way safer to fly in an airplane than it is for you to drive your car. And yeah, if you're talking about miles driven, that's very true. The airplane is safer than the car. And at this point, it actually looks like these Tesla cars might well be safer than a car operated by human. It's borderline. You could argue some of the statistics. I've seen them argued both ways. But it's not a bad vehicle from the general safety standpoint. But as I said, we've got another Tesla story this week. And this is from a guy. His name's Param Sharma, 25 years old, lives out in Middle California and in the Bay Area. And he has been arrested twice, and he was booked into the Santa Rita jail on counts of reckless driving and disobeying an officer. So what was happening? What was he doing? He apparently was driving his Tesla from the back seat. Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely incredible. So this is an interesting one, too. This is KTVU Fox 2 reporting. He said Param Sharma met KTVU's Jesse Gary in San Francisco Wednesday afternoon, not far from his mother's high-rise apartment. After getting out of jail on 2 counts of reckless driving, he pulled up sitting in the back seat of a Tesla with no one in the driver's seat. When asked if he purchased a new Tesla after the previous one was impounded, he said, "Yeah, I'm rich as beep. I'm very rich. I feel safer back here than I do up there. And that was him sitting in the right rear passenger seat of his Tesla being interviewed by a Fox affiliate TV station there in San Francisco. It's absolutely amazing to me. And he's saying how he's been brake checked before, which of course is something way more in California than you would out here in the Northeast where I live. And that's where somebody slams on their brakes who's in front of you because they don't like what you're doing. And he says, oh, my Tesla came to a complete stop. Tesla's CEO really knows what he's doing. I think people are tripping and they're scared. It's incredible. The police officer that had arrested him said that he was sitting in the rear seat, driving, quote unquote, the Tesla. And when the police officer pulled him over, he climbed up into the driver's seat in order to stop the car. The guy even posted a video saying, I just got out of jail. I already got another Tesla. You feel me? I'm rich like that. It came out of the pandemic, beeping millionaire. And some more swear words that I won't repeat here. So the CHP, California Highway Patrol spokesman, told Vice's Motherboard, which is a website that covers a lot of tech, that it's recommending charges to the district's attorney's office and conducting a thorough investigation that will consider the possibility of previous incidents and obviously his social media. So here's your problem. According to Tesla, autopilot is a hands-on driver assistance system. It's intended to be used only with a fully attentive driver. And I mentioned some of the problems that Tesla's been known to have. Consumer Reports has also reported, this was just last month, that Tesla's driver monitoring system not only failed to make sure the driver was paying attention, but it also couldn't tell if there was a driver there at all. Obviously, if it could tell there was a driver there, it wouldn't have been able to be driven, quote unquote, from the back seat. Tesla's full self-driving system has more capabilities, but again, this is from Tesla. Both autopilot and full self-driving capability are intended for use with a fully attentive driver who has their hands on the wheel and is prepared to take over at any moment. Cadillac came out with a system, I like this idea, where it vibrates. If it notices that you're not paying attention, it'll vibrate your seat. Some of these vehicles will vibrate your steering wheel just to wake you up. Hey, wake up. There's various levels of autonomy. Level 5 is you don't need a driver at all. And Elon Musk says that he expects Teslas will be available at the end of this year, perhaps in 2022, that will have full what's called level 5 automation, which means they can drive without any human attention. The California DMV says that Tesla's director of autopilot software told regulators that Musk's predicted timeline does not match engineering reality, okay? So again, it's somebody on the marketing side that's overselling things a little bit or maybe a lot of it. I really don't know. But they do have permits in California to operate these vehicles in full autonomous mode as long as there's human backup drivers. And I think it's good. I think we're moving forward. And the investigations into these crashes are going to make us, I think, ultimately a lot safer. So let's say that there's a crash with a human at a wheel of a normal car. They'll investigate. They'll say it was that human's fault. And then insurance companies kick in and payments are made. Maybe a driver's license is suspended or removed from that person. But when we're talking about an autonomous vehicle like a Tesla, when they do the investigation and they find a flaw in the assumptions made by the programmers, the software that's in the computer, that flaw is probably fixable, which means that type of accident will probably not happen again. And that's where I'm looking at it, saying these ultimately are going to make our roads safer. Because Harry may make a mistake, and Harry may not make that mistake again. But Mary may make that mistake when she's out driving. But if the Tesla car has an accident, they fix the problem, Teslas are probably not going to have that accident again. So I'm looking forward to this in the future. I'm not sure it's going to be this year, maybe next. Make sure you're on my newsletter, CraigPeterson.com/subscribe. I've been talking about this Tesla driver, and I just absolutely love this because I did a little searching on him. I went to DuckGo and poked around a little bit to find out who is this guy, this Sharma guy, who's driving from the back seat. And remember, he said he's rich as bleep, and so he doesn't care that his car was impounded. He just went out and bought another one. His money apparently comes from his parents, who apparently were in the banking business. And then he rose to fame during the whole lockdown because he was posting videos of him driving his Tesla from the back seat and making all kinds of outlandish statements. That's how he got rich. And the rest of us, what are we doing? We're busting ourselves trying to get everything done that we can possibly get done and hoping people notice. Oh, man, it gets frustrating sometimes. Every year, Verizon publishes some cybersecurity stats, and I absolutely love these. I pay attention to them. I read them from cover to cover because they are absolutely correct. This is their 2021 Data Breach Investigations Report, and it helps me to understand what's happening out there in the world. And of course, I follow the news stories every week, and it also lets me know information about the surveys that they have done with business owners and IT executives and everything else. So they came out with some new stats. I would expect that there was a change because so many people were working from home. And to me, it would seem obvious that with people working from home on computers that probably are not properly secured, they're probably improperly using VPNs, that we would see an increase in ransoms. Now, we know that we did, right? 300% increase last year because of people working from home and businesses just not having things set up properly. And that makes sense because most businesses, it's not their business to do cybersecurity. They're just trying to stay in business. I had a meeting this week with one of my clients, a long-term client. He's been a client for, 25, 30 years. And it was interesting to me to get his perspective. In fact, it was very informative, because I live and breathe this cybersecurity stuff. He doesn't. And he has concern about cybersecurity. It would be inconvenient to have ransomware in his mind, because he has a lot of stuff on paper, and I could maybe use the backups. Now, we keep reminding him, hey, you're doing the backups yourself. You don't have us doing them, where we automatically, at least once a month, we start your systems from backups. We do that in the cloud. We have our own little cloud. We don't do this up on like Amazon or anything, but we do it locally. And that way we know the backup's good, because if we can start your machines up in our little cloud, we know that we got a good backup. He has never tested his backup. We had another client like that, and when we picked them up as a client, we went in, and they were taking home hard disks every day, religiously, just like this guy is. And so they would take the disks, bring in Monday's disk, plug it in Monday morning, and leave it plugged in all day so the backup would go onto that disk. And then Monday night, he would take that disk home, and then Tuesday, he'd bring in Tuesday's disk. Now, there's a lot of problems here. One is they never tested it, ever. And they'd been doing this for at least 18 months prior to us getting there, because that was the advice of somebody. Somebody said, yeah, all you have to do, install the backup software and plug in your disk every week. So, number one, it had never been tested, right? You got to test these things end to end. You have to do full restores, which they weren't doing. The other thing that is a problem with these USB drives is You plug them in. Are they really working? How many errors are on that drive? Are you even checking the logs from the backup software? So they had a server. In fact, in both cases, now that I think of it, they had a server, and it had a RAID array. It had 3 drives in a RAID 5 configuration, for those of you who know what that means. And basically what that means is you could lose one drive and you'd still be okay. So the idea is the drive goes bad, you replace that drive, you resilver the whole thing, and then you're off and running again. So you can lose another drive and you'd be okay. But in both cases, both of these businesses had a bad drive in the RAID array. And they didn't notice it. They didn't know. And at least in this other customer, they had never, ever checked to see if their backup was working. And in the second customer, so in both of them, they never checked. And they said, so how much would you charge us to verify it? And we said, we'd want to spin it up, and that means you have to copy everything. We'd have a bunch of bench time, so it'd be $500, and we'll make sure your backups are working. Oh no, we can't do that. We can't pay the $500. So who knows? Still, we don't know if the backup's working. They think that they could recover from paper, that ransomware isn't going to be so bad, and extortion doesn't matter. My head just spins with this stuff. It really does. It just spins. So looking at the Verizon report that comes out, the Data Breach Investigations report, they are seeing that ransomware, phishing, and web application attacks all increased during this last year. And they also found that 85% of the data breaches involved human interaction. So what that means is you and I doing some stuff that maybe we shouldn't be doing. And some of this human interaction is installing malware, right, from phishing activity where they're sending out these emails. A day doesn't go by where I don't get an email. Every day I get emails that are saying, what's the biggest one right now I've been getting? Oh, it has to do with some signature software. I'm not going to name them because I don't want them to get in trouble because I got decent software. But it's a big deal, okay? A very big deal. So they're saying that the median financial impact. So do you know what median is? Mean, median, and mode. Median financial impact of a breach last year was about $21,000. 95% of the incidents cost the businesses somewhere between $826 and $653,000. Okay, so many breaches, they say, did not cause losses. And those that did cause losses, this is where it really gets big, okay? 95% of the computer data breaches led to losses as much of 1.6 million. So it's getting expensive. So what do we do? How do we deal with this? I talked about this before. You need to improve your Windows privacy and security. You need to harden your Windows. You need to get good firewalls. And I talked about it this week again. You need to use something like OpenDNS, which has a free version. There are paid versions, but this is going to get you a long way towards being safe. OpenDNS.com. That's where you'll find them online. If you can't remember, you can't write it down, just email me, me@CraigPeterson.com. Ask your question, and I'll be glad to point you in the right direction. I was just talking a little bit about the Verizon data breach, their incidents report, and I wanted to just bring up one other bit of data. And that is that the attacks that are going on are actually simpler. They're not as complex as the old ones. And phishing attacks are now going hand in hand with the use of stolen credentials. What are stolen credentials? Well, it is information that has been stolen from another website, typically. Now, it might be stolen from your business, and so they know what your password is because they have all of the passwords in the business you're working for. But more often, they're doing something called credential stuffing. So they're going to the dark web, and let's say they want to attack Colonial Pipeline, which of course just happened, and Colonial Pipeline has their URL that all of their email is sent to. What they end up doing is they go to the dark web and they find credentials for people that have a Colonial Pipeline email address. And those credentials are going to include things like your password on that website. Now what happens is they stuff that username and that password in as many sites as they can. So let's say they found that you're using Microsoft Remote Desktop, and maybe there's a 0-day bug, as there are many bugs in that software that people haven't patched yet. So they'll just use that to get on. But if they can't, let's say you patched it and they found your email address in use over on website X that has nothing to do with Colonial Pipeline, what they can then do is take that username, which is that email address, and that password, and try it at Colonial Pipeline. And guess what? It works. More than 60% of the breaches involved credential data. And 95% of organizations that were experiencing this credential stuffing attack had between 637 and 3.3 billion malicious login attempts throughout the past year. We see them all the time. We have a couple of internet-facing servers, and those servers we log when someone tries to log in, and if they try and log in more than 4 times, immediately they are blocked at the firewall. So they can't even connect to the server anymore, period, at all. And that stops this type of attack. So I'm sitting here, I was literally scratching my head because I cannot figure out how can you have 3.3 billion malicious login attempts at one business over the course of a year and not do something about it. Not have them automatically blocked. This is just crazy because credentials are the key that the bad guys can use to get into the network. And they're not just using them to do ransomware into somewhere like Colonial Pipeline. They're using those credentials to go to your bank account. Yeah. So most people are using the same email address as credentials, which is ridiculous. I can't believe businesses are letting people use an email address as their login username. But most people are using that same email address and those same passwords at multiple websites. So I want you to do something now, and I've asked you guys to do it before on the show. You may not have had a chance before, you may not have known about it, but I want you to go, if you're not in front of your computer, go there right now, or grab something you can write this down with, or send me an email, just me at CraigPeterson.com. What I want you to do is go to haveibeenpwned.com. So that's like it sounds, have, H-A-V-E-I, the letter I, been, B-E-E-N, P-W-N-E-D.com. And put in your email address right there. And that will tell you what information of yours is widely available on the dark web. Now, it doesn't have everything that's on the dark web by any stretch, but it has all of the major stuff. And I can guarantee you, if you've had an email address for any time at all, that email address is going to show up. It's going to show up a lot. Okay? So check it out, haveibeenpwned.com. And the trend, according to Verizon, is towards simplicity. They're using password stuffing. They're using social engineering. 15x spike in misrepresentation, which is a type of integrity breach. Business email compromise doubled last year, and again this year it doubled again. 60% of business email compromise attacks that successfully stole money. It's crazy here. Median loss, $30,000. That's email coming in, pretending to be someone that they're not. And again, I've helped companies that this has happened to and helped them tighten things up. That is the problem. Okay? It's huge. Median was 30,000. And 95% of them cost somewhere between $250 and $1 million. It's just amazing. So we've got to pull up our socks. We have to be careful. I have some free info that you'll get. If you sign up for my email newsletter, you're automatically going to get a few of the special reports that I put together. You're going to get my weekly emails. It's all for free, this newsletter. Most people can't believe they don't have to pay. I had someone just this last week say, are you sure I'm not supposed to pay for this? Because a lot of newsletters out there, of course, you have to pay for. But I send out all of this type of information for free, and I have free little trainings and free guides, and I'm more than glad to offer them all to you guys. So check them out. Go right now, CraigPeterson.com/subscribe. Now, Have I Been Pwned is, again, a website you should go to. But the other thing you need to do is make sure you're using a password manager. Now, a password manager is something like 1Password. I would no longer use LastPass. I have pulled that off of my list of recommended password managers because of a major problem that they had, and it showed they really didn't know what they were doing. Everybody makes mistakes. Nothing's 100% secure. Believe me, I know that. But they really lost all of my trust with this huge hack that they had. So 1Password is the only one I'm recommending nowadays. That's a digit 1 and the word password. Use that. If you can use something other than your email address to log in, do that. Change your account name to something else, something completely unrelated. Call it the human element or something. Use a login that's not your name, that is not your email address, and is not something that's easily guessed. And then use a fairly randomly generated password. Now, what I'm recommending now is the latest NIST guidance. And NIST is the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. And the latest NIST guidance says you do use some random stuff, but I'm not talking about random letters, numbers, special characters. I'm talking about taking 3 or 4 randomly chosen words or even a phrase that are separated using maybe a digit or a special character, making sure there's a little bit upper, lower case stuff going on, but it's something that can be remembered if you need to. And 1Password will generate these for you automatically, which is absolutely amazing, okay? It's such a godsend. I was surprised when I looked the other day. I have 1,400 different accounts in my 1Password. Yeah, that's how many I have. That's a lot. And it'll also keep your notes in there so you can put in bank account information, etc. It keeps it encrypted. It keeps it in their own little secure cloud. So knock on wood, it should be pretty darn safe. Now, I want to point out one more thing about these statistics here. Nearly all email servers, 96% of email servers that were compromised in these attacks were cloud-based. Once they've gotten into your email, they have control of you. I just got a call again. This is a friend of a friend who called me up because their email account had been compromised. Almost certainly because, again, credential stuffing, there's password information out on the dark web, etc. Because I looked it up for him and sent him the link. Here's what Have I Been Pwned says. But once they have control of that email address, they probably have something that you're using for password recovery. So you go to the bank. So the right way to do this for the bad guys is they go to like Bank of America. They put in your email address and say, I forgot my password. So where are they going to send your password. They're going to send it to your compromised email account. If they'll try all of the major banks and they'll see what they can find. 96%. So it's just crazy. And people are using this. The cloud is just the name for someone else's computer. And you don't know how well protected it is. And you still have liability if it's broken into. And in this case, Verizon's saying that this led to the compromise of personal information, internal business information, medical information, bank account information. This is part of the challenge of moving a business to the cloud. It's incredible. All right, enough of that. Make sure you do get all this info. You'll get all of my free special reports by signing up if you're not already on the list. If you have any questions, CraigPeterson.com. Feel free to reach out me at CraigPeterson.com. That's my that's my email address, and I don't use it to log into anything. Me at CraigPeterson.com.